Hello, my name is Mikhail Zhivets, and I'm the producer for World of Tanks. Today we'll discuss some of the features being released in the 8.6 update.
What are the significant changes to gameplay that we can expect with this update?
8.6 brings a lot of changes to the basic game mechanics. We'll be changing the way accuracy and shell drift work. The economy is in for a change. Some tanks will be receiving credit and experience modifications. The value of armor in regard to calculations will be changing too. As you can see, there's a lot to talk about.
Please tell us about weapons accuracy in the 8.6 update.
Great improvements will be made to weapon accuracy. Right now in the 8.5 version, many shots travel to the edge of the aiming circle, a total of about 20% of all shots. We'll be altering the distribution probability so that the shots will rarely travel to the extreme edge of the aiming circle. Now, only a tiny percentage of the shots will go to the edge. After the update, most of the shots will travel to the center of the aiming circle, making firing much more accurate. But these changes will not be applied to artillery.
How will the update affect artillery?
There will be a lot of changes to artillery in this update. We'll expand the artillery branches up to Tier 10, so vehicles that are currently Tier 8 will become Tier 10 vehicles. The gaps will be filled with 2 or 3 lower-tier vehicles, depending on the branch. The balancing of these vehicles will be adjusted in such a way that the Tier 8 vehicles becoming Tier 10 will have an overall battle level of 7.5. As a whole, they're receiving a bit of a nerf compared to their current performance. As for general artillery parameters, we will change the rate of fire and the speed at which the shells travel. The shell travel speed will be lowered by about 10 to 20% for most cannons and almost halved for short-barreled mortar cannons. Though the accuracy will be noticeably reduced for some vehicles, the overall in-game accuracy for the majority of artillery will remain close to what it is right now. This is because of the new shell distribution probability. If we apply the new accuracy changes to artillery, then SPGs will become much more accurate in this next update, and we don't necessarily want that. We want to keep the current SPG's accuracy balance, and we'll reach this by changing the accuracy numbers to keep the real in-game ratings at the current levels.
Will there be any new maps in 8.6?
Yes, there will be a new map called Sacred Valley. This was inspired by the small mountain villages of springtime Korea. It's a quite interesting map with a complicated terrain relief. There are a lot of buildings in some areas and vast open spaces in others. This map should be enjoyable for every vehicle type. The new update also brings the redesign of 3 old maps, Murovanka, Wide Park, and Airfield. They were remade to utilize the improved graphics rendering. Wide Park also had some balance changes.
What are the changes to armor and armor penetration?
We have revisited many things to increase the in-game value of armor in the new patch. First of all, we reduced the normalization for the composite rigid shells. Currently, the composite rigid shells normalization is about 5 degrees. It will be reduced to an average of 2 degrees. It will still have some effect when hitting thin armor, but when dealing with thick armoring, the normalization effect will be negated almost fully. We will also change the heat shells action. They will work much more like the way real ones do. Now, heat shells will be affected by spaced armor that would reduce the shell's effectiveness. If a heat shell hits spaced armor and the distance to the main armor is long enough, then the shell will lose most of its armor penetration while traveling this distance. Spaced armor that is close to the hull will have almost no effect. Like the Super Pershing spaced armor or the IS series thin spaced side armor will have a really weak effect on the heat shell's armor penetration, while thick and distant spaced armor, like the ones on the Maus or the E100 or the T95 self-propelled gun, will really cut the armor penetration down. The armor penetration will also be affected by the tracks. They are usually located at some distance from the hull on most vehicles, so the heat shell will lose a lot of armor penetration when hitting a track. The heat shells will also start to ricochet. When hitting at a low angle like 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees, the heat shell will now bounce off. We will also lower the armor penetration of several top guns that fire heat shells to maximize the endgame value of the tank's armor. Only the top cannons of the 9th and 10th level will have their armor penetration by any noticeable amount. We will see how this affects the game, but we think that this will make the heavily armored vehicles much stronger. I must note that we have made a serious reduction in the armor penetration for the 105 and 122 mm heat shells used by the medium-tier tanks, the ones used by Panzer IV and Shermans, for example. We considered the short 105 mm cannons overpowered for their battle levels and reduced their armor penetration by almost a quarter of the current number. We have also reduced the high explosive shell's effectiveness versus heavy tanks. The 80 to 90 ton vehicles received a new equipment module, the heavy spall liner that has twice the efficiency of the current liner.
How will camouflage mechanics change?
The 8.6 update will bring changes to the camouflage system. The camouflage net and the camouflage pattern itself will work differently. Now they work in a way that they grant very little bonus to vehicles with low base camouflage factor, meaning that when a big and highly visible tank like the Maus or the E100 installs a camouflage net and a pattern, the usefulness is limited. The vehicle is visible from the same distance it was without the camouflage modules in a lot of cases. The 8.6 update will introduce fixed bonuses to camouflage patterns and to the camouflage net that will increase the vehicle's camouflage factor regardless of its size. This will depend entirely on the vehicle's class. Tank destroyers will receive a better camouflage bonus from paint and net than the rest. The mechanics for the camouflage skill will remain untouched, as well as most others. I must say that we did something to prevent having tank destroyers with a net and a camouflage pattern become super hidden. Remaining invisible behind bushes and killing everyone. We reduced the concealing factor of bushes and trees. The difference isn't overly large, though.
Will there be new premium tanks?
We'll be introducing a Tier 5 British heavy tank, the XL Cert. We'll also add a German TD, the E25, and a Chinese Tier 8 heavy tank, the 112.
How will the in-game economics be changed?
Now TDs will receive 33% more experience for the same actions, and SPGs will receive 50% more in the new update. We used to have reducing modifiers for these vehicles, so they gained less. We decided to remove these modifiers so that all of the vehicle types will receive the same experience amount for the same actions. All of the vehicle types of Tier 6 through 10 will receive up to 10% more credits for the same actions, except for SPGs. The increased income will allow the players to play on top vehicles more often without having to farm credits on lower levels or premium tanks. We will also introduce an interesting bonus for knocking tracks off. If a player knocks an enemy's track off and an allied player damages or destroys the enemy, then that player will receive an experience and credits bonus. The bonus will be calculated by the same principle used for calculating the spotting damage bonus. We also plan to recalculate the premium shells prices in 8.6. The prices for composite rigid and premium high explosive shells for SPGs remains almost the same. They were just balanced to match the effectiveness of these shells. Effectiveness is counted by the shell's penetration and damage. Now the shells with similar efficiency will have the same price in gold. Earlier, there were some illogical moments when almost similar shells with the same efficiency could have a great difference in price. Now the prices are closer to being equal. Some dropped, some were raised, but now they line up more closely. Some heat shells have become more expensive by almost half. We noticed that certain heat shells were clearly underpriced compared to other shells of the same efficiency. We had to boost the prices a bit so that all of the premium shells would correspond to their efficiency.
Any more new features in the 8.6 update?
We have made adjustments to some visual effects like explosions and flames that rely on the current game client performance. If a tank gets into the heat of battle with many explosions and the FPS starts to drop, then the system will reduce the effects quality to keep from letting the performance level drop to minimum levels. I should also mention the newly introduced feature of tank movement compensation in sniper mode. Currently, if a player rolls over some obstacle, say some rails, rubble, or a fence, when in sniper mode, the tank jostles quite noticeably. The reticle follows the swings of the tank. This knocks the aim off. You have to wait several seconds for the tank to stop and several more for the reticle to stabilize. The 8.6 update introduces movement compensation. Now, the reticle and the tank's cannon will follow the player's aim and will swing much less when the vehicle is moving. This is closer to a modern tank's cannon stabilization, a little non-historical, but it's much more comfortable to play with. You can freely play in sniper mode when passing different obstacles like a railway. You can aim, you don't have to wait for the tank to stabilize. It is much more comfortable and interesting to play.